Despite Trump winning the Sun Belt down here by fairly comfortable margins, she would just barely eke out an electoral victory in that scenario with 270 electoral votes. And even then, a win for her would not be a guarantee because this is essentially an estimate. But it does seem to align with Nate Silver at Silver Bulletin in that Harris, she'd really have to be leading by about 3 to 4 points nationally to pretty much be a heavy favorite to win. But like I said, for this map to even happen, she'd have to be up by 3.5 points nationally for something like this to even occur. And considering that Trump right now is up by 2.5 points, for Harris to win this election, she would literally have to gain 6 points nationally in about the time span of about 1.5 months. Guys, we have 43 days left until election day. That is not a lot of time. Now, I'm not saying I can see ahead of time into the future with a crystal ball, nor am I saying that anything in this world is a guarantee, because clearly nothing is. But with that said, making up 6 points nationally in about 6 weeks, I mean, the odds of something like that are incredibly small. And to compound on that fact, Harris, while she has gained nationally over the past handful of weeks, and at one point it did kind of look like she might gain a national lead over Trump if she had continued her previous momentum. But I mean, for Harris to win this election, I personally calculate that she would have to be up over 3 points nationally to win this election, about 3.4 points to be precise. And she would just barely win the election, with Pennsylvania being the tipping point state, and she would just barely win through the Rust Belt here. Now, Trump would sweep the Sun Belt down here, but Harris would win through the Rust Belt swing states. And if we take a look at those margins on the map, Harris would win the state of Wisconsin by a lean margin of 1 point in that scenario. Michigan by 2 points, also lean, and Pennsylvania by just the skin of her teeth. And voters are looking for something more than just talking points and sound bites. And I think the nail in the coffin for Harris in this race will be the fact that she just has not properly clarified her policy positions. She has a history of flip-flopping on her policy issues from the past. And I think the nail in the coffin for Harris in this race will be the fact that she just has not properly clarified her policy positions. She has a history of flip-flopping on her policy issues from the past, and that is not going to help her in a time where voters really need real solutions to real problems. So as of right now, things are looking exceptional for Donald Trump, but the problem for her is that her momentum has recently hit a wall, and she has kind of stagnated at about 47.5% nationally. It doesn't mean that she can't gain more from here, but this stagnation is a sign that her support has at least temporarily maxed out, and she's going to have to do something to change the state of this race. I mean, you look at her debate performance, for example, things are heating up, and you likely hear a lot of chatter surrounding this race, especially from the mainstream media, that would have you to believe that this race between Trump and Harris is close. In fact, CNN came out with an article yesterday basically claiming that the race is going to be very close. In fact, it's going to come down to the wire, according to them. The swing states are going to be decided by razor thin margins. It's going to be a very close election, right? And they basically say that this is going to be the closest race in the past 60 years. And they're essentially saying it's because of the polling as to the reason why this race is close. You see, Texas is a projected 14-point victory for Trump in my forecast. Florida at 14.5 points for Trump. Iowa at 14 points. And Ohio is over 15 points for Trump in the safe column. He's also going to be pretty competitive. Trump is in many of the deep blue states as well. You see, Minnesota is only a 2-point margin for Harris right now in my projection. New Hampshire is only at about 1.5 points for Harris. Maine is at 3 points for Harris. New Mexico is under 3, and Virginia is just a 4-point Democratic victory. So Trump is doing really well right now. He's doing exceptionally well. In fact, he's currently on pace for an even larger victory than he had in 2016 against Hillary Clinton, where he won 306 electoral college votes. But right now, he has 313 in the electoral college, as I mentioned, and he's in really good shape. Now, for this video, I essentially want to talk about things not only from Trump's perspective, because he's obviously leading, But I also want to look at things from Harris's perspective as well, because she's obviously down right now, and she's not just a heavy favorite to lose this election. I would say she's at a point right now where, to win this race, I'd say she'd have to have one of the biggest comebacks in American political history. In fact, if the election were held today, Trump would deliver the largest Republican victory since Bush Sr. back in 1988, where he won 426 electoral college votes in a blowout election. Now, Trump's victory in 2024 is not going to be quite that large. You can see here I'm projecting Trump currently at 312 to 226 in the electoral college. So it's not quite, the landslide election that we saw for Bush back in 88, but it's going to be a pretty substantial victory for Trump. He is maintaining his recent bump in support. He's holding at about 50% nationally right now. Kamala Harris is just over 47%. Her support has definitely stagnated as of late, and Trump's national lead of 2.5 points is a pretty substantial lead. And if we scroll down here, we can see my state margins for this election. If we take a look at the swing states in particular, we're looking at about 4 to 9 point victories for Trump in all the swing states in my projection. Trump is up by 5 points in Wisconsin. He's up 4 points in Michigan, 6 in Pennsylvania, 8 points in North Carolina, 6 points in Georgia. He's up by 7 in Arizona and 7 points in Nevada as well. Pretty large victories. And we're also looking at big victories for Trump in many other states as well. And we know it's not because we saw how poor the polls were back in 2020. They underestimated Trump by massive amounts, both nationally and in the states. And so when you see here that Harris is up by 3 points nationally in RCP, and then you see down here in the swing states and how they show very tight races in all of these states, the polling averages are all within about 2 points for both candidates. But once again, that is actually a horrific sign for Democrats because Trump is typically underestimated by about 4 to 5 points in all the swing states on average. So once again, the media is lying to us about this election. They're misleading people to believe that Harris is really competitive when in reality, Trump is leading in this race by much more than what people realize. In fact, if the election were held today, Trump would deliver the largest Republican victory since Bush Sr. back in 1988, where he won 426 electoral college votes in a blowout election. And Trump's national lead of 2.5 points is a pretty substantial lead. And if we scroll down here, we can see my state margins for this election. If we take a look at the swing states in particular, we're looking at about 4 to 9 point victories for Trump in all the swing states in my projection. Trump is up by 5 points in Wisconsin. He's up 4 points in Michigan, 6 in Pennsylvania, 8 points in North Carolina, 6 points in Georgia. He's up by 7 in Arizona and 7 points in Nevada as well. Pretty large victories. And we're also looking at big victories for Trump in many other states as well.